Now, another example of this standard is standard 4, in that, again, we're trying to offer practical guidance in solving problems. We, as a nation, are concerned about childhood obesity. We're concerned about our children's education, where we rank. But there's so many other factors that go into this. So we want to look at, does your article and what it's found, are we able to solve some problems? Are we able to take what's been presented and generalize that to try to help solve a problem that our communities, our states, and our nation faces? So when you're looking at standard 4, again, don't try to overgeneralize. I want you to be careful. Don't be like our sociologists who try to go too far in the fingers and predicting criminal behavior. But I do want you to look at what information has been given to you and decide for yourself, is there a way that we can help meet a need and help solve a problem? The article may not always state it for you. Again, the object of this assignment is to get you to start critically thinking and trying to really figure out, how can we make these notions make sense? And so again, with relation to standard 4, how is it going to help us solve problems? Now, another important factor when it comes to the articles that we read, and especially if those of us who write, we want to make sure that we are internally consistent. It's so easy as researchers that there's so much we want to talk about and so much we want to share that we start getting really big, when in fact we've got to collapse that down and really make sure that we're focusing on one idea at a time. And even though they may relate, it is very easy for research to get out of control and to get ambiguous when we try to bring too much in at one time. So it is very important that we follow what your PowerPoint demonstrates as a 3D format, that we describe something, that we define it, and that we discuss something. So we want to make sure that terms that are being presented in your articles, that you're really looking at how they've presented them. And again, each of the standards before we get to standard 5 are setting you up to where you can absolutely present that information. So do make sure that you're following these standards from the beginning to the end. Don't try to mix them up, and don't try to start at 5 and then work your way to 2 and 3. Really start from 1 all the way to 5. So again, standard 5 wants it to be consistent. We don't want to be going off topic and talking about things in the end that we never talked about in the beginning. So that's something you're going to look at. Another standard that I want you to focus on, and be careful in how others write, because it's easy for us in our writing to make assumptions. We assume certain dynamics and certain criteria to be true. Now, that's okay when it comes to research, because we can't control all the variables, but at the same token, we want to be careful that we're not assuming too much. For example, when I was putting my own thesis together, one of the assumptions that I made was that children pass through the same sequences and stages of development. Whether you have a disability or not, that children pass through the same stages of development. Another assumption that I made was that play is beneficial to children. Now, even though I'm making these assumptions, I did pull the literature together to demonstrate that even though this is an assumption, that the literature supports the notion that these phenomena do exist. But at the same token, you want to make sure that you have as few assumptions as possible, because the more assumptions we make, the less credible our source becomes. So that's something that you're definitely going to want to take a look at as you're reading your article, is, do they make any assumptions about the phenomenon that they're presenting? Now, the last 2 standards that are really important that I want you to focus on, and that's standard 7. Is the article or is the information falsifiable? Now, in the past, it's been very easy for students to confuse or not understand completely what they mean by falsifiable. And in essence, what it's asking you is, can we study this phenomenon? Can we, with the information that we've been presented, with all of the criteria involved, can we now take this study and either replicate it, or can we redesign it and restructure it in a way that might yield us either the same results, or is it going to take our level of information to another higher level? So absolutely, we're just looking at, can we test this phenomenon? Now, some of you might say, well, my article is more of a literature review. It's not a study, so this doesn't apply to me, and that's not the case. What I'm wanting you to look at, for those of you who are looking at literature reviews, is, what does the literature say? And based on what the literature is being presented in this particular article, can you design a study that would test it, that would allow you to take a look and decide for yourself, does this phenomenon exist when we look at these different variables? So absolutely, just looking at in Standard 7, can we test the theory? Now, Standard 8, I feel, is really important because does this article stimulate the creation of new thinking, or does it allow us to look at things in different ways that we never once thought before? As much as I enjoy writing, I don't want my writing to stop with me. I don't want somebody to read my article or read what I've written and say, oh, that's it, that's the end all be all, because that's not the case. I want somebody to take my work, to take my ideas and take it to a new level. Look at it in a way that I didn't look at it, and that's the beauty of brainstorming, and that's the beauty of research, is that we build on what's been done before, but we can look at it in novel ways, or maybe look at it in a way that the researcher didn't quite see, or oftentimes in research we offer recommendations and what we think it should be looking at, or a direction that we think it can take. So absolutely, we want our work to take people to a new level of thinking with it. So absolutely, Standard 8 is important. Last but not least, we look at Standard 9. Standard 9 simply says, does this article make sense? Is it explained in a way that just I walk away feeling good about it, feeling that this is a strong article, that it's well supported, well documented, or does this article leave you feeling a little bit confused? Does it leave you not really wanting to explore further? Does it not even are you not even wanting to get past the second page? So there are so many factors that can absolutely go into this last standard. And when you look at the standards, you're going to think, well, gosh, you know, they kind of relate in some way, and absolutely they do, because we want them to progressively build on each other. So that's why I say start with Standard 1, and if you work your way all the way through the standards, that by the time you get to 9, your opinion and your ideas about this article and the attributes that it contains are going to be much more well-formed, that Standard 9 is going to be very easy for you to address. So again, make sure that you're addressing each and every standard. The first 2 go-arounds with this particular assignment, you're going to be doing it more in bullet form. I'm not asking for this in essay format because I do realize that many of you are being asked to write in a way that you haven't written before. I know you know how to write a report. I know that you can do a book report. I know that you can summarize what you've read. I'm here to take you to another level in your writing, and I want you to be able to walk away from this semester reading literature and feeling much more comfortable and being able to have an opinion about it. Just because it has a PhD after its name, just because there's a master's degree after somebody's name, anybody can write. So you want to be able to have that ability to look at literature and decide for yourself, does this make sense? There's a reason why there's reference pages. There's a reason why bibliographies exist. It's because we want to be able to go to those cited sources of information and find out for ourselves, are they being used accurately? Are they being cited correctly? So don't take literature at its face value. Feel comfortable in exploring and digging and critiquing. It's okay for you to judge. In this particular assignment and with me this semester, I want you to be the judge and jury on these articles, and I want you to let me know what you think. There's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong opinion to the articles that you find and to the opinions that you hold. But what's important is that you support them. What's important is that you give examples to support your opinion, that you're not just telling me, yes, it relates to standard number 2. Well, I want to know, how does it relate to standard 2? The more examples you provide to support your opinion, the more valid your opinion becomes, the more easier it is for a reader to look at what you've written and say, absolutely, without a doubt, I couldn't agree more. So do make sure that in your writing that you're giving those examples. And then eventually, as you start to work into the writing of the essay format of this in Journals Critiques 3 and 4, you're going to be much more comfortable with being able to pull your opinion together. That at that point, what I want you to guard yourself with is, if you can ask yourself a what, where, who, when, how, why type of question to any aspect of your writing within these standards, that means you're not done with your thoughts. And be sure to answer those questions so that this way you really have well-rounded thoughts and ideas. I certainly hope that today's lecture helps you make sense of this assignment, and I do realize that it is confusing in the beginning. This is not the first time I've offered this assignment, and absolutely there is a process to the learning and the writing of it. So be patient with yourself. I'm always a resource for you. If you would like me to take a look at what you're writing, do know that I'm always willing to do that and make sure that you folks are on the right track. So again, thanks for listening. Have a great day.